Okay, in this video we're going to talk about social emotional development in adolescence. Specifically, we're going to talk about identity. Erikson's fifth stage is identity versus identity confusion. What Erikson points out is that adolescents find themselves in what we call a psychosocial moratorium. That is, that they're in this kind of gap between childhood and adulthood. So they're kind of in between the security that they felt in their attachments to the caregivers as a child and the autonomy that they desire and crave that comes along with adulthood. And so they're in this weird in-between place. They are relatively free from responsibility, a lot of the responsibilities that we tend to attribute to adulthood. And that leaves them able to try on some new identities. And so we often see adolescents experimenting with different roles, with different personalities to try on some different things. There is a video below this one that I found several years ago that was created by a couple of high school students for an AP psychology class, and they actually give you an example of an adolescent trying on some different roles and personalities. It makes me chuckle when I watch it, and it's a good example of what Erikson is getting at through this stage. So what we see and hope to see is that adolescents will cope well with the conflicting identities that are emerging, and when adolescents are able to do that, they will emerge from this stage with a new sense of self. Now, Marcia gives us 4 statuses of identity, and in your discussion board there is a project for you to do with those 4 statuses of identity. Let me go over them very quickly just so that you can understand them, and then I will let you go do that discussion board. The 4 statuses of identity are identity diffusion, identity foreclosure, identity moratorium, and identity achievement. Identity is going to be marked by a level of crisis and commitment. So when we think crisis, I think we always think traumatic experience. When we're talking about crisis in this instance, though, we're talking more about questioning something. So for those who are in identity diffusion, there's been no questioning, and they're not really committed to a particular identity. For those in identity foreclosure, they're very committed to a particular identity, but they've never really questioned or sought out any others. For those in moratorium, there's been some questioning, and they are trying to figure out what identity fits best, but they're not committed to any. And in identity achievement, there's been both the crisis, the questioning, and a firm commitment now to a particular identity. What we see is that identity does not remain stable throughout our lifetime, and in fact, in thinking about different types of identity, whether it's sexual or work or peer-related, we typically go through a cycle that we call the MAMA cycle, M-A-M-A, where we go from moratorium to achievement, moratorium to achievement. We repeat those cycles throughout the rest of our adulthood. So, identity, a big piece of adolescence. We've talked about developing sexual identity, they're developing social identity, developing an ethnic identity, but identity is a big piece of adolescent social emotional development, and my guess is that you are figuring out now who you are, and so we're kind of exploring this stage while we're in the middle of it. Don't forget to watch that video below, and also go do the discussion board.